Ensnared in a mysterious nebula, Dr. Mbenga and the crew of the Enterprise are transformed into fantasy characters in Star Trek Strange New Worlds' first season, 8th episode, The Elysian Kingdom. But what happened? What did I like, and what didn't I like so much? Before I get into this recap and review, please note this video contains spoilers, so if you've not yet seen this episode or any of Strange New Worlds' first season, this might not be the video for you. Let's warp into this. The Enterprise is conducting scientific research in the Elysian Nebula. Taking advantage of some downtime, Dr. Mbenga spends time with his daughter Rukia, who remains stored inside the ship's transporter buffer. Mbenga continues to read from the fantasy story The Elysian Kingdom, which Rukia has heard many times and wishes to change its events. With Rukia's untreatable condition rapidly worsening, Mbenga intensifies his efforts to find a cure, but his latest attempt fails, with a chemical compound exploding in his face. Una arrives in sickbay and asks Mbenga why he hasn't cleared a mission party for active duty. Mbenga confesses getting caught up in his research and apologizes. Sympathetic to the doctor's situation, Una nonetheless reminds Mbenga of his duties as the ship's chief medical officer and orders him to get some rest. On the bridge, Pike and Spock conclude their survey of the nebula, with Pike noting the welcome change of mission, one of science rather than battles and chaos. With their mission complete, Pike orders departure at warp speed, but the ship fails to move. Spock theorizes the nebula may be preventing them from creating a stable warp bubble and suggests they use thrusters, but this also fails, causing the ship to violently rock, injuring Ortegas in the process. Pike calls a medical emergency, summoning Mbenga, who arrives to discover the bridge has been transformed into a throne room. Pike welcomes Mbenga, who is now dressed in royal attire, as the king, as he and the bridge crew bow, much to the Doctor's surprise and confusion. From the episode previews, I came in fully expecting some fun, campy shenanigans, but I wasn't quite prepared for what we ended up getting here. One of my main gripes of Strange New Worlds' mostly excellent first season so far has been the lack of a narrative through line, some sort of larger plot arc, but that appears to have been addressed to some degree here, with Mbenga and Rukia's arc sneaking in as the season's major serialized storyline, which is surprising given how rushed and tacked on I found the story's introduction back in episode 3. I do hope we get more instances of this before the season ends, but if we don't, I'm mostly satisfied with this episode and the show's testing of stories not confined by its episodic nature. I liked Una and Mbenga's initial scene, which felt very much like Star Trek in balancing emotion and duty, something other New Trek has consistently failed to capture. Finally, one tiny detail that served as a lovely and thought-provoking flourish was the revelation that The Elysian Kingdom was written by Benny Russell, a wonderful callback to Deep Space Nine's Far Beyond the Stars. This Easter egg actually has deeper implications as it continues to blur the line between fact and fiction introduced in that famous episode. In any case, if we accept Benny as a real person, much like this episode seems to imply, this is a positive sign of the eventual acceptance of him and his work, which is lovely to see. On the transformed bridge, Mbenga recognizes Pike and Ortegas as Sir Adia and Ralph, characters from the story he has been reading to Rukia. Adia and Ralph bicker, referring to the nebula as a mysterious fog they believe is a spell cast by their enemy, Queen Neve. Suspecting a hallucination caused by the exploding chemical compound from earlier, Mbenga heads to sickbay. There he encounters Nurse Chapel, now the Lady of the Forest Audrey, and La'an, who is now Princess Talia, whose kingdom Queen Neve has invaded, searching for the Mercury Stone, a magical weapon Talia believes Mbenga possesses. Mbenga scans himself, Audrey and Talia, finding nothing wrong with him, but detecting higher than normal levels of dopamine in the transformed crew. The group then encounters Hema, who, like Mbenga, hasn't transformed into a character, but is captured and dragged away by Queen Neve's soldiers. Mbenga believes Hema is the key to solving the mysterious shipwide transformation and convinces the group to join him on a rescue mission, telling them the chief engineer is the wizard Castor, who can lead them to the Mercury Stone. Travelling through the corridors, now transformed into thick and lush forest, the group meets Spock, who is transformed into the wizard Pollux. Mbenga asks Pollux to help guide them to Queen Neve, despite knowing the character as a treacherous one. Pollux agrees and leads the group to a secret dark shortcut, which is revealed as a Jeffries tube. The group finally reach Queen Neve's kingdom, located in the cargo bay. Neve, revealed to be a transformed Uhura, demands to know the location of the Mercury Stone, but Mbenga refuses to cooperate. As the Doctor predicted, Pollux is revealed as loyal to Neve and orders Mbenga and his group join Hema in the Queen's dungeon. It was only a matter of time before this show gave us the old crew and or ship takeover story as part of its ongoing mission to tick every classic Trekian trope. I'm sure this element of the episode will divide viewers, but I liked a lot of what we got here, with the cast, much like their franchise predecessors, making the most of their opportunity to ham it up and perform against type. Staying consistent, the show remains committed to serving the ensemble, with pretty much everyone getting a moment to shine. My personal favourites this week being a weaselly and spiteful Pike, a full-on pantomime La'an, and also Hemmer, who after weeks of frustrating absence comes back with a bang, threatening to steal the show on multiple occasions while also utilising Bruce Horak's real-life visual impairment in the best and most sci-fi way possible. And while it probably wasn't intentional, Hemmer threatening to send Queen Neve to the event horizon, it did get a chuckle out of me. Another hero here, one that often goes unnoticed, is the show's editing, which so far this season has effortlessly adapted to match the tone of each episode. Here, as a light and comedic affair, the cuts are quick and snappy, serving to nicely punctuate the episode's jokes and sillier moments, similar to something you'd expect on a show like Curb Your Enthusiasm. It's not all perfect, however, with brief moments where shots don't quite match or run a second too long, a noticeable failure that I wouldn't expect from a production that, for the most part, has been excellent so far this season. In the Queen's Dungeon, M'Benga and Hemmer reunite and discuss their situation. The two appear to be the only members of the crew unaffected by what Hemmer describes as a consciousness inside the nebula. Hemmer speculates that the consciousness has, for some reason, pulled the story from the Doctor's mind and suggests heading to engineering, where he should be able to use his telepathic abilities to contact it. Hemmer then reveals a hidden plasma torch, using it to free the group from the dungeon. En route to engineering, the group is intercepted by Pollux and Neve's soldiers, who the Queen has sent to recapture them. The cowardly Ralph flees while Adia attempts to protect M'Benga, but the group are soon saved by Una, transformed into the huntress Zamira, who forces the enemy to retreat. In engineering, Hemmer's scans reveal a powerful disembodied consciousness inside the nebula and theorizes they may have encountered a Boltzmann brain, a spontaneously generated consciousness previously believed to be theoretical. Hemmer suggests disrupting M'Benga's brainwaves in an attempt to free the ship, but Adia fiercely protests any action that will harm her king. From their bickering, M'Benga learns Adia and Zamira know each other, a significant change from the book. M'Benga and Hemmer realize the consciousness isn't taking the story from M'Benga, but actually the Doctor's daughter, Rukia. M'Benga heads to sickbay to retrieve Rukia, but discovers his daughter is no longer being held inside the transporter buffer. While I loved a lot of what we got here, I think the concept started to wear a bit thin at the midpoint, with jokes and goofy exchanges beginning to feel a little repetitive. Much of this can be blamed on the story, which, while still entertaining, failed to add a sense of urgency or any real danger. This could have been achieved by furthering the dropped dopamine angle, which I fully expected would worsen, giving us a ticking clock and further reason for M'Benga to solve the mystery, while also enhancing his conflict of interest in choosing to prioritize his daughter's needs over the crew. The inclusion of the Boltzmann brain theory, however, was a nice touch that hopefully went a small way towards satisfying viewers craving some sort of harder sci-fi concept. It's not touched upon too much, it's more just here to add something smart to the story, but it's still a nice inclusion, one that, for me anyway, stirred up the classic sci-fi brain in a tank visual that reminded me of this classic moment from Futurama.
Hey, do the thing!
I don't do that anymore.
From the ship's logs, M'Benga learns Rukia has been transported to an unknown location on the ship. With every second critical due to her illness, M'Benga enlists Hemmer in locating his daughter. Overhearing their conversation, Pollux reports back to Neve, who now believes Rukia is the Mercury stone and plots to take her from the Doctor using a captured Sir Ralph, who is easily turned to her cause. Remembering an earlier conversation with his daughter, M'Benga heads to his quarters, believing Rukia to be there. Arriving at his quarters, M'Benga and company find Sir Ralph, who quickly reveals his treachery, capturing M'Benga for Queen Neve, who arrives to claim his daughter. M'Benga refuses to hand over Rukia, and Hemmer steps in, improvising threats to send Neve and her forces to the Dark Realm, which he eventually does, sending them to Cargo Bay 12. Entering his quarters, M'Benga reunites with Rukia. M'Benga runs a scan which miraculously reveals no sign of his daughter's illness. Through Hemmer, M'Benga contacts the consciousness in the nebula, who reveals its loneliness drove it to free Rukia and transform the Enterprise into a place for them to play. M'Benga tells the consciousness they cannot remain like this and asks to be freed, but the consciousness reveals Rukia's illness will return if they leave. The consciousness offers to take Rukia, joining with her and freeing her of a life of illness and isolation. M'Benga offers Rukia the choice, drawing parallels to their situation and the king in the story, who held the Mercury stone before freeing it at the cost of his happiness. Rukia Rukia elects to stay, hugging her father as the consciousness transforms her and takes her into the nebula. Mere moments after leaving, a now adult Rukia returns to the ship, assuring her father that she is safe and happy, thanking him for allowing her to be free to create her own stories with the consciousness. The two part ways as the consciousness returns the Enterprise back to normal, with the crew having no memories of the event. Later, Una visits M'Benga in sickbay, who reveals to Number One that Rukia is alive and safe, and that he has been through something extraordinary, something Una says sounds like one hell of a story. For all its lush production values, madcap energy and fun performances, the episode was struggling to properly justify its existence. But that all changed in the final act as everything came together for its conclusion. A wonderful, moving marriage of science fiction and emotionally driven drama that has long been a tried and tested formula for top-tier Star Trek. If the aim was to reduce me to tears, then M'Benga and Rukia's scenes succeeded with alarming ease. I've often been a sucker for Trek's more emotionally charged episodes. I'm almost always affected by Ben and Jake's final scenes in DS9's The Visitor, an episode some of the content here bore a strong resemblance to at times. I do have to admit, however, that I watched this on my son's first birthday, so perhaps I was swept up more than normal in the emotional wake of being a father, and that could have contributed to some critical bias. Who knows? All I know is that I loved this. It just worked, hitting all the right notes, justifying all the madness of the episode, and also serving as a strong conclusion to an arc that again, I think didn't get off to the strongest start. The Elysian Kingdom gave our heroes the chance to let their hair down and play against type, and they ran with it, giving us a range of performances that showcased their various dramatic ranges. It was all very silly, until it wasn't, with the episode's emotional conclusion rich and satisfying, and in keeping with one of Trek's best themes of love and sacrifice to protect the many, not just the few or the one. It's not perfect, and it's definitely not going to be for everyone, but I loved what we got here. A fairy tale of an episode that combines fun, campy thrills, and wild performances with an emotional family drama beautifully realised by an excellent Babs Olusombokun, whose performance will likely stand as one of the season's finest. I'm giving the Elysian Kingdom 4 stars out of 5. But what did you think of this episode? Did you love it? Did you hate it? How would you rate it? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more Star Trek reviews, recaps, lore, theories, and more coming soon. Until next time, I'm the TrekLad. Live long and prosper.